Yeah, so I'm Toon Pronk, the provincial geochemist.
Welcome to the Explore Everywhere podcast, where we explore the world through hiking trails, go and see some amazing places, and meet the people who love and protect them. This episode is brought to you by the Hiking Trails of New Brunswick 4th edition book. This book is a beautiful book. There's been past editions. As I said, this is the 4th edition. I think I have every one of them. It was the go-to book since I started hiking with the majority of the trails in the province. It has all the important trails in the province. It has, I think, 100 and I forget how many trails, quite a few trails, but it covers the whole province. I like this version better than all the past ones because in past ones they had like black and white a lot, but this one has full color pictures, glossy paper, great descriptions and maps. I have actually, this is quite a significant read, 325 pages, but I have read this from front to back like a novel, which I am a little bit obsessed more than probably most, so that's what I do. But this was a good read. All the descriptions about the different trails which I've been on, but tells a little bit of the stories about what they've experienced when they were there. This version is so well done and beautiful. And maps, I love maps, so it shows all the different topo maps for most of the trails. So if you're going to start exploring hiking trails in New Brunswick and you like books, I would suggest that you buy one of these Hiking Trails in New Brunswick books. They're available on the exploreeverywheremedia.com web store, or you can get to the web store by going on the Hiking MB website and clicking on any of the store links. This episode is brought to you by the Waterfalls in New Brunswick book. This book is a great, amazing, beautiful book. I love maps and books, especially books that are full of color pictures and beautiful. It's just, I don't know, there's something tactile about holding a book that you can't get online. There's two versions of this book. There's a guide version, which is more of a guidebook type thing. This is more of a picture book that describes the waterfalls and has some beautiful pictures of it. So I think I like this one better because, like I say, you can go online, you can find out information on how to get to a lot of these places. I have a lot of them on the Hiking MB website for a guide, but this shows the beautiful pictures and describes the falls and how big they are, some of the history in the area, some of the land ownership, who owns them. There's lots in here that I haven't explored yet. There's so many waterfalls across the province, but it covers the whole province and it covers a lot of waterfalls. This is a beautiful coffee table book. Like I say, lots of pictures, descriptions of waterfalls. If you love waterfalls, which a lot of people do, then you'd want to check out this book. The book's available on the exploreeverywheremedia.com web store, or you can go to the Hiking MB website and click on any of the store links to get it. Welcome to the Explore Everywhere podcast, episode 16. I'm pretty excited about this episode. It's my first interview. We're going to go back in time to a place where the Bay of Fundy didn't exist, and Nova Scotia and New Brunswick were attached to each other. We're going to go back in time to a place when there was volcanoes across the landscape. We're also going to go back to a time when most of New Brunswick, or all of New Brunswick, was covered in thick ice, 500 meters to 2 kilometers thick, and how that impacted the geology of the province. For this week's episode, I interviewed Toon Pronk, who is a geologist for the province of New Brunswick. We climbed up to the top of Currie Mountain and talked about the geology across all of New Brunswick and how it relates to a lot of the hiking trails that you're on. So if you ever go out on a hiking trail and you look at the rocks, or you're on a beach and you're wondering how those rocks got there, how they formed, what the geology was, you're going to learn a bit about that today. It's a pretty long episode. It gets pretty deep into some of it, but I'm just going to go through some terms just so you have them for reference, and I'll include them in the show notes. There's rock types that we talk about. One is basalts. So basalts are dark, fine-grained rock that usually comes from a lava flow. Gabro is a coarse-grained, slow-cooling rock that forms crystals because it's slow cooling, and we talk about why in the podcast episode. Felsic magma, or rhyolite, is a magma made up of lighter elements, usually lighter in color. Feldspars are a group of rock forming minerals that crystallize from magma. And sedimentary rocks are rocks that form from sand or gravel being stuck together. So wherever you see sand and gravel now, millions of years from now, that'll all get pressed together into a rock. You don't need to remember all the details of that. You just need to remember that they are different kinds of rocks and they come from different places in geological terms. And we talk about that in the podcast. But just know that those are types of rocks. Different kinds of landscape features that we talked about are drumlins, which are elongated hills formed by glaciers. So basically they're scraped out of the landscape by the glaciers moving through. Moraines, which are accumulations of dirt and rocks on glaciers, can be left behind in ridges when the glaciers retreat. So sometimes you see gravel bars and stuff like that. That was stuff that was picked up by glaciers. And as the glaciers melted, they were left behind. Eskers are sand and gravel deposits formed in rivers in and under the glacier, which is why they appear as sinusoidal ridges in the landscape. So they're dropped by the glaciers. Delta, usually formed at the mouth of rivers where sediment from uprivers deposited. So if you go to the mouth of any rivers, you usually find like more sandy material where all of the sediment that washes down the river kind of accumulates near the mouth of the river. That's the delta. Caldera is the system with the vents, magma chambers, blowouts, etc. in volcanoes. Sagamuk, Carlton, and the Mount Pleasant complex, and some of the other granite rhyolite complexes in the southwest are caldera complexes. A series of shifting magma chambers similar to Yellowstone, which is over a continental hotspot. Tectonic plates are pieces of the Earth crust that move around and bump into each other in a really slow time. So the edge of one would be out west in the mountains of BC and down through California. There's two tectonic plates that are pushing up against each other, and one's going underneath the other one, and the other one's being pushed up into the mountain range. Another example of that is the Mid-Atlantic Rift. So in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, there is a long chain of basically openings where volcano spews out and pushes those plates apart. So we're slowly getting farther away from Africa. And if you go way back in geological time and look at a map of Africa against North America, you'll see that they fit together, like they'll slide back together if you took both land masses and put them together. At some point they used to be one landmass, but that rift in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean is slowly pushing that apart, and we talk about those. Accretionary terrain is something else we talked about. So when tectonic plates come together, material from one is pushed up on the others. If you don't know all the details of this, don't worry about it. You'll get a lot out of this podcast. Hopefully it just triggers you to look up more on geology. It's fascinating when you get out and start looking around, and we tie it to a lot of the hiking trails around. We talk about probably 20 different hiking trails and what you'll find there and what the origins are. The other thing we talk about is periods of time, which aren't as important but kind of interesting. We talk about different periods of time from 200 million years ago to 550 million years ago, roughly. And I'm rounding those off pretty hard. For the purists out there, look it up if you want to know the detailed dates for some of these periods. But we talked about the Triassic period, which is 200 to 250 million years ago, roughly. That follows a great mass extinction. It's also when, following that great mass extinction, life from the ocean started to diversify rapidly and spread across the land. At that point, the world is still one large continent called Pangaea, which is combined the whole landmass of Africa, Asia, put back together with North America, South America, with the tectonic plates. So that's called Pangaea, where it was one big continent. The older period that we talked about, one of them is Carboniferous period, roughly 300 to 350 million years ago, and that's what formed most of the coal on Earth. So the plant material was laid down, and then basically when things died, and they died in layers in the ocean, that got compressed over time and created a lot of the coal, and you'll see that up around the Minto area. The Devonian period, which is even older, 350 to 400 million years old. Plants and animals evolved and expanded quickly, resulting in forests spreading across the land. So there's a rapid expansion of different species and evolution of species across the land from the oceans. A lot of that is probably what accumulated I'm guessing, to form the Carboniferous period where that all got compressed into the coal. So the oldest period that we talk about is the Cambrian period, which is roughly 500 to 550 million years ago. And it's made up of a high proportion of sedimentary deposits that exceptionally preserve plants and animals from that time in fossils. So really nice fossil beds probably came from that period where you find all the different kinds of fossils. Just because the sediments like gravel and sand formed around dead plants and animals, and that got preserved and pressed into the fossils that we find today in museums and stuff. The other thing we mention is LiDAR, which is a technology that is fairly recent. LiDAR is a laser measuring technique that I think it's in a plane, but I think it can be done by satellites too. But it's basically measuring with lasers very accurately the ground underneath tree cover. That's the kind of difference of past. I think the detail's a bit different too. But it can measure the shape of a ground underneath tree cover. So it's just like you're looking at the ground with no trees on it. And you can find some really interesting geological features that you might not have known were there otherwise, like eskers or any of that type of stuff. So that's a quick rundown. I'll have the summary in the show notes. There's so much other resources if you want to dig into this further. This is just to give you a taste of the geology that's around, just so you're thinking about it when you're out hiking. And with that, let's talk to Toon Pronk about the geology of the province of New Brunswick. We start our conversation on top of Currie Mountain, which is near Fredericton, which is an old volcano we talk about. Then we take a quick trip over to a quarry on the Carlisle Road. It's a fascinating subject, and I hope you enjoy.
Yeah, so I'm Toon Pronk, and I work for the Department of Resources and Energy, and I work for the Geological Survey branch, and I'm the provincial geochemist. And my background is mostly in physical geography and Quaternary geology, which deals with ice ages and younger. So it's the upper part of the landscape. This is not basalt. This is Gabro.
Okay.
This is part of the sort of like the feeder system of the
Yeah.
volcano. That's one of the reasons why you don't see a hole, but you also don't see it because it's 300 million years old.
Yeah,
you know?
350 is what.
Yeah.
We have a joke in the family every time we read a sign about geology, it's usually 350 million years old. So.
Well, everything Carboniferous is sort of in that range,
Yeah.
between 300 or 290 up to like 350. Yeah. And so it's a very old, like the landscape. I mean, people sometimes they like. I don't know if you've seen the Walton Glen description, but the new thing in the book for the Parkway says that it's Walton Glen's shaped by the glaciers, but there's very little sign that the glaciers had anything to do with that.
Yeah, because
it's way older.
Yeah.
It's and it's all angular, right? If the glaciers would have been over there, you would have had smooth edges and stuff like that, and smooth like this, like
Yeah. Like
so-
the granite, like Acadia Park is very rounded granite.
yeah,
that
that's
type of
exactly
stuff
right.
is-
And Turtle Mountain would be like that.
Yeah,
It's very
yeah.
rounded on the top, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Have you hiked Turtle? Yeah, you must
Yeah,
have hiked Turtle
yeah,
Mountain.
definitely.
We used to go there with our scouts, and we'd hike up on a Saturday morning or whatever, and
Yeah.
we sleep overnight.
Yeah.
We hike the next
Oh,
back
it's a
the
great
next
spot,
day.
yeah.
So this part, this is where the outcrop is, and these are the volcanic rocks, like all
Oh,
through
okay. I
here.
didn't realize they went back in a band
Yeah.
like that.
Well, when you go up to McLeod Hill Road,
Yeah.
you know where the cliff is,
Yeah.
just Royal Road, and you
Mhm.
go off to McLeod. Well, that cliff is sort of capped by lava. Like
Oh, okay.
Basalt.
I didn't realize that.
This is Gabro, so this is the feeder, and then
So by feeder, you mean like where the lava came out?
yeah,
Basically.
yeah, basically,
Yeah.
So the basalts are what flows out, right?
Oh, okay.
And so this, if you crack this open, is a loose piece. I brought a hammer. You can.
So is it the same origin, just different?
It's the same
Different,
chemistry.
okay.
It's the same chemistry, but when you have intrusive and extrusive rocks, the intrusive rocks they cool off slower.
Yeah.
So the crystals grow bigger.
Okay.
And the longer it takes
I
to
didn't
cool
know that.
off, like if you have bodies that are deeper and cool off very slowly,
Yeah.
you have very large crystals.
Okay.
If they cool off faster, you have very small
And you don't see
crystals.
the columns. You see the columns on the fast drying stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, because they're basically
Drying fast.
drying cracks or
Yeah.
cooling cracks.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you go, you can see some of those when you go up on the Royal Road Quarry too. And I don't know if you can see them here at the Carlisle Quarry, but so
Yeah.
the Carlisle Quarry is just like is number
right
one,
there.
and number two is the other down here.
Okay.
Yeah, and volcanic soils typically are rich. Right?
Yeah.
Rich in things like iron and manganese and all sorts of
Which I think
good
has a lot to do with all the hemlock and white pine around.
good nutrients.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The big
that's
trees,
right.
so.
So we're standing on a remnant of one of these feeder pipes, basically.
Oh,
you know,
okay.
That
Okay.
that
I didn't
fed
realize that.
that fed these volcanics, and the interesting thing about these volcanics is it's like this. So this way, the Fredericton Fault,
Mm-hmm.
it goes up towards Minto, and at Minto there are volcanics exposed,
Mm-hmm.
and so they're part of that same system. And then when you go down this way, you end up in Harvey,
Mm-hmm.
and in Harvey, like along the railway tracks there,
Mm-hmm.
along the lake, there's also volcanics
Okay.
exposed, and these volcanics are all the same chemistry.
I didn't realize that.
So it's part of a like a rifting zone,
Yeah.
similar like the East African rift zone
Yeah.
right now. So, yeah, it's there's always
So
a
basi-
story,
yeah,
right?
yeah.
And that's
So
when
would
the-
that fault line up and go all the way to Grand Manan then, or would that be a different one down there?
that would be a different one.
It'd be a different
yeah.
one. Okay.
Yeah, see, Grand Manan is an interesting story in itself, and
Mhm.
we're working on a new highway map for a geological highway
Yeah,
map
you're
for the
saying.
province. And Grand Manan is interesting because it's a failed rift. Like so after in the Triassic, when the Atlantic Ocean started forming,
Mm-hmm.
initially the rift zone was where the Bay Fundy is now,
Oh,
and
okay.
it failed, like it stopped
Yeah.
somehow, and then it broke off further.
Basically got clogged up and pushed out somewhere else.
It broke off further up, and then it started rifting.
Oh, okay.
And that's what we have today as the Atlantic Ocean. So Bay of Fundy is really a failed, not experiment, but a failed rift zone.
So would the fault line in Grand Manan follow right up kind of through the bay then?
Yeah, there's a whole bunch of faults under the bay, and they're
Okay.
like a
I didn't
globbin
know.
structure
Yeah.
almost. Yeah, and so all the sediments, like in the bay, are a lot younger. They're Triassic and younger.
Okay.
Right? So,
So
yeah.
how is in Grand Manan? How is it it's separated to lava origin on the right, and it's more sedimentary on the left? How is that like?
It's actually
Is
the
it just the way
rocks.
the
The
fault
rocks on the
pushed?
lower part of Grand Manan,
Mhm.
they're old, like they're Cambrian and Precambrian.
Yeah.
And then, so they're basement rocks, what we call basement rocks, which is underneath what most of the things that we see. So the basalts, they're
Mhm.
a lot younger. Like
So,
they're
would they be
Triassic.
something that pushed out and just pushed in that direction, kind of thing?
Yeah,
Or?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
yeah.
Okay.
It
I
was one
wondering
of
how
those.
there's a
It's
difference
similar
there.
to this. It was a rift, and it like Iceland is today.
Yeah.
And the volcanics, they just came back up and they started flowing out. And
Yeah.
those are all basalts.
Okay.
In Grand
So they
Manan.
wouldn't have covered basically the eastern side of the island. They would have
Yeah,
covered the western
yeah,
side of
and
the
it's
island.
it's all high, right? And,
Yeah.
and when you go to some of the cliffs, you can see the layers of basalt,
Yeah.
like in it.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's New Brunswick, geologically speaking, a very interesting
Well,
place
yeah.
to live.
Well, then on top of that, you got the flock of sheep on Grand Manan, which is
Yeah.
I don't know if you'd classify that as geology, but the
Oh,
big
yeah.
granite falls that kind of got left
Yeah.
by the glaciers.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, there's glacial material everywhere. Have you been to?
There's a lot of erratics in this area.
Oh yeah,
No.
been to. Well, if you go to the, I was just writing something up for one of the, just like highway spots where you can stop or where you're biking, right?
Mhm.
Like if you go to the agricultural station,
Mm-hmm.
well, your office is
where my
just up
office is,
there,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Well, when you go to that parking lot, the biking parking lot there,
Mm-hmm.
when you look south, you see this big ridge going from sort of northeast to southwest, northwest to southeast. That's a drumlin.
Is that you mean looking down through the field?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah,
Where
there's
there's
a-
kind of there's kind of an indent. You look straight
Yeah.
out at.
but that
Princess
ridge
Margaret
that
Bridge.
goes out in the direction of the landfill site,
Mhm.
that's a 3 kilometer long drumlin.
Oh, okay.
And when you look at like LiDAR imaging and stuff
Yeah.
like that, it's absolutely, it's like classic textbook.
Yeah.
When you go on the trail back into the city,
Yeah.
you see these gigantic erratics like at the head of the drumlin.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And Yeah.
There's some huge rocks down in the
and
woods
people
south
see
down
that.
towards like Macadam in that area. There's, there's big rocks where they have
we were
ladders
just in
there.
Spednick Lake for the last weekend.
Spednick Lake's the other
we were
spot,
camping there, and there's all these erratics all over the place. But when you go,
there's a big one on Campobello Island actually.
they're everywhere,
yeah, they're
right?
everywhere. Yeah.
But when you go to Scotchtown, and you go into the Grand Lake Spit, like that gravel bar that goes away in, have you ever been there?
I don't know if I
You
have.
can walk on this gravel bar for 1.5 kilometers, and you're only into the water up to here when the water's low.
Yes, sir.
And it's part probably of an old moraine.
Oh, okay.
And you look around there, and you can find crazy boulders. Like some of them are from Saguenay.
Yeah.
Up in Quebec. So they traveled like 500 plus kilometers and were dumped right there.
Yeah.
It's
how does it pick them up? I always wonder how
it shears up usually in the bottom of the ice.
Yeah.
Depending on the basal conditions.
Glaciers were more kind of top down the way they build, but I guess in the ice age it would be different though.
Oh yeah. Like these big ice sheets, when they travel over like large tracts of land and they come into obstructions, they shear
like
at the bottom,
like a slow river.
Yeah,
like
and they pick stuff up usually down ice. So if the glacier come over this way, it would pick up stuff on this side. And you see, this side is way steeper.
Almost rolls it up.
Than that side.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, it picks it up just because the basal ice conditions change.
Yeah.
The pressure and the freezing or melting. And,
yeah.
We had actually when I used probably the most I've used my geology experience was I worked at the mill for 16 years doing forestry work, and down in Fredericton Junction in the woods down there's a moraine, huge like giant moraine, but it kind of curves.
Oh, it's probably, is it an Esker?
It's an Esker, yes. Sorry, it was an Esker, and it looked like an asteroid crash site. So all the people at work were like, "I think it's an asteroid." So I went down and walked, and you can walk around it, and it had a little pond in the middle of it. Beautiful spot because it's kind of isolated from the rest of the forest.
Or something like that. Well, that's the other thing. Like Killarney Lake, the far end of Killarney Lake is an Esker.
So, it is.
So the dam. That holds the water in is an Esker.
Oh, I didn't know that.
And
I was wondering that too because it kind of drops off pretty quick on either side there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, and the interesting thing about that lake is like there's a climatic event that's registered in the lake sediments. It's called the Killarney-Guernsey oscillation. So at the end of the last ice age, it was warming, and then a really rapid cooling, and it was first registered here in Killarney Lake by one of the UNB students.
Oh wow!
And so that got published in Nature and all that sort of stuff. People here have no idea.
Oh no, I know.
They have no idea.
It's fascinating stuff.
Oh, it is. Like, and that's the thing, and I think there's a general resurgence.
Yeah.
And I think you're right. Like, people want to know more.
Well, I think people are getting out and want to know what's around them, kind of.
Yeah, that probably too. I mean, my friends that were on Moraines, they said, tell them that we used to guide all the time for hiking,
Oh, so much.
I think a lot of people really enjoy that. One of my colleagues and I said we need to make like a beach site, like all the beaches around the province. Like all different shapes and sizes and all different rocks and it's just fascinating. And people go to beaches and pick up rocks.
What is it? The
Stonehammer.
Stonehammer. That's what I'm thinking of. Yeah.
Well,
that's kind of an attempt.
Yeah, and that is pretty good. But Stonehammer, like people come there, and a geopark is more like an experience than an actual park.
Yeah,
right? That's what confuses people sometimes.
Yeah, no, I know. Yeah,
I mean,
definitely. I've heard lots of stories about
the
people
new
asking where the park is.
Well, the new one in Nova Scotia is the same way. Right? It's that whole stretch from Truro all the way to Advocate Harbour, that whole coast, right?
Yeah.
And there's so many different things to see.
Oh, what a great spot down there.
Yeah.
Which tends to lead to all the hiking trails and stuff, because I mean, the more interesting the geology is, where the hiking trails.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, population based too, but.
Yeah. So like here, like I mean, I've tried this with a couple of the teachers that I take out here, and there's a trail when you go around, like it basically loops sort of around, right?
Yeah.
And then there's a lower trail, and there's a couple of side trails, and it takes a little bit of work, but you can get to the Carlisle Road.
Well, there's one that goes back and hits a field, and then up through a field, and
exactly.
Up there,
and then you're almost like you're only a couple of hundred meters from where the quarry is.
Yeah.
The interesting thing too is the landscape, right? So this is 300 million years old, and the lava flows are about the same age, or maybe a little bit younger. But then that caps a bunch of sedimentary rocks that
Mhm.
are also exposed in the quarry. And then you go to the river,
okay. I see what you're saying.
and the environment in which those gravels were deposited 300 million years
Mhm.
ago is almost exactly like what's happening today.
Okay.
So you can make that link between the present kind of
Yeah.
environment and
Conditioning.
ecosystem
Yeah.
and the old one, right?
Yeah.
I mean, of course, the vegetation and the kind of fossils you can find in there is nothing what we see today. But,
Yeah.
you know, but
So is there a lot of fossils in the
there's
quarry?
quite a few large ferns
Mhm.
and you know, like the horsetail ones
Yeah.
that you find, like small ones now,
Yeah.
gigantic ones. You know, there you can find them in some of the beds there. Yeah,
How high would this have been when it was a volcano? It would have been like
hard to say.
quite a bit
Um,
higher,
And I mean, it doesn't have to be high, right?
right? Yeah,
I mean,
that's true.
in the rift zone, and I mean, if you look at Iceland today, like, you
Yeah.
know, that's a large rift zone, but
Pretty flat, though, really.
it's pretty flat. Yeah,
'Cause it kind of separates.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So, it's hard to say how high this would have been.
Like sometimes
No,
you see some
you
marketing
can-
materials that say it.
Yeah, well, sometimes
Sometimes it's just this is what it could have been.
I mean, there are certain ways you can calculate how much material has been exhumed above
Mhm.
it, right?
Yeah.
Like by looking at the pressure in the crust or any of those kind of things. Now, with the ice, it's a lot easier because it's way more recent, right? So when the ice left,
Yeah.
the Earth's
In the
crust
10,000.
rebounded, right?
10,000 year range?
Yeah,
kind of
yeah,
thing?
but like in this area, about 10,000 years.
Yeah.
And the Earth's crust rebounded, right? And then it's sort of like almost like a guitar string, you
Yeah.
know, it goes up and down and then it stabilizes. Right?
Because the weight of the ice compresses the ground
yeah,
down.
yeah, exactly.
Like
and the
quite
more weight.
significantly, or-
Oh yeah, like think about it. There's like 500, probably at least 500 meters, maybe a kilometer of
Oh,
ice
okay.
right here. Weighs
Yeah.
a lot.
Yeah.
When the tide comes into the Bay of Fundy,
Mhm.
the Earth's crust actually goes down.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Really?
because of the weight.
Yeah.
But it's a very slow reaction, right?
Yeah.
So there's a very tiny vibration in the crust. over
Measurable,
the-
but not.
Yeah, yeah.
But still.
That's pretty crazy, but it's
Yeah,
true.
it is.
yeah.
Well, the Bay of Fundy itself is pretty.
Well, there is
crazy.
something like I forget how many kilometers. I think it's 104 cubic kilometers of water come in there every
Yeah.
tide.
Well, I never ceases to amaze me when I sit there and watch it. And
Well-
it chased me in Point Wolf one, and I was at a jog to get away from it. Like it was.
Well,
coming
I mean,
fast.
I when I first came here, I'm from Holland originally,
Mhm.
and when I first came here, I was studying sea level change, and
Mhm.
I worked down in the marshes by Beausejour in that area.
Yeah.
And one day we were working down at the bottom of the cliff, and we were drilling by hand, and we had this drill gear in the ground.
Mm-hmm.
We were probably at about 12 meters deep or something like that. And the tide came in so fast we had to leave our equipment
Yeah.
right there
Oh, I
at the
can see
bottom
it.
of the cliff. And then we came back the next day and we had to, it was of course all silted in and everything.
Yeah.
And we had to get some major leverage to get it back out. But
I've
yeah.
almost lost hiking boots just taking them off on the other side of streams, and it comes in
Oh
pretty
yeah,
quick. So.
yeah, oh yeah, for sure. You know, and any time, like, you know, if you have, like, we were on the Sealy Beach, Long Beach section of the footpath
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
And
there.
there's the Dragon's Tooth, for instance,
Yeah.
is there, right?
Yeah.
So, you know,
That's not an erratic. That's a.
Yeah, that's
that
in
more erosion.
yeah, that's part of the volcanic rocks that are there.
Oh, it is.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's not an
It's
erratic.
different. Yeah, it's a different.
Yeah, yeah.
There's, I don't know how much of the funny footpath you've hiked, but there's one place there where you're following along. It must be an old rift or something, but it's like a cliff with like a deep hole on the side, and the trail kind of goes up on the side of that. So it drops off, and then there's a big cliff that you kind of go.
Is
along.
that on that section too?
No, it's further over. It's over by Goose Creek, I think. I'm trying to
Yeah,
remember
see,
which-
we have hiked like the Fundy Park path.
Yeah.
In there.
Yeah.
And then we haven't had like my wife and I at one point we were saying like, yeah, we should do that sometime. we
Yeah.
never really did, but we did sections of it. But now because it's more accessible, all
Yeah.
of a sudden,
Yeah.
we had a conference for geological directors from all over Canada
Mhm.
here, and we published a little guide with the Parkway, and we took all of them out there, and
Yeah.
and we are working on a pebble guide too.
So where
for
is that now? I don't think I've ever seen that. Is it like a?
the guide?
Yeah.
It's on our website.
Is it?
Yeah,
Okay.
but I can send
Actually,
you.
I think. Yeah, I think I, did look
I
through
can
that.
send you the link.
Yeah.
yeah,
I'd like to see that.
yeah.
I saw the Pebble Guide. I was looking at the Pebble Guide a bit.
Yeah, the Pebble Guide, there was one for Nova Scotia out, and I don't know if they have made one themselves at the Parkway, but we're going to do one for the entire Bay of Fundy.
Yeah.
But the Parkway, man, like...
Oh, it's fascinating.
That's
the diversity down there.
I mean, we were going to hike the Walton Glen Gorge again this summer with some friends that haven't done it before, and then they closed the trail.
Yeah.
The way we like to hike that Walton Glen is we go down the Macomber footpath and we hit the Fundy Trail, and then we go back up.
Road down through.
Because I love that stretch through Little Salmon River where you have to go through the water
and stuff. Yeah.
And because you see all the geology, like in the boulders and stuff like that.
As long as you get good shoes. We went
water
just
shoes.
Little water shoes, but without hard soles. We had soft sole ones the first time, and it was a bit painful. What's the history of the gorge, the Walton Glen Gorge, then?
It's a structural weakness, like probably a fault line.
Fault line. So would it historically have been like a granite?
It's a Felsic volcanic.
Okay.
Felsic volcanic.
Okay.
So it's
older
like a
volcanic.
rhyolite. Oh yeah, it's old. It's Cambrian, most of it. So which is like about 500 million years old.
Yeah.
And you can see by the sharpness of all the rocks that it reactivated over and over again, right? But when people say, "Oh, it's formed by the glaciers," but it's more likely that when the glaciers came over top of that, it just filled it in.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
And
just rolled it on top of it.
then it washed it out again when the meltwater came through.
Yeah.
Because that's what's happening. I mean, if you look at the deltas along the Parkway, like, which is kind of interesting if you go to Long Beach. So there's deltas. Well, there's deltas in St. Martin's that are Triassic. They're 230 million.
And by
years
deltas,
old.
you mean
like deltas that have formed into lakes, you know,
Okay.
or marine
Like-
deltas, right?
Yeah.
So and then if you look at Long Beach, you know where the upper parking lot is, like it's at about 35 meters above sea level.
Yeah.
Well, that's a post-glacial delta. So
Okay.
the sea level was that high at that point. And then the new delta is forming right now. And
Yeah.
when you see it at low tide, right, it
Yeah, it
goes,
gets pretty big.
goes out forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, we were there working actually. We call it work. And we were mapping some of the sediments in the delta because there's debris flows in that. Like, and they're very thick and they're almost as hard as concrete. Like it's a very weird kind of environment. But the amount of material that's in there is just gigantic. And it was probably like that at Little Salmon as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's still a modern delta there, but there's only remnants of like post-glacial deltas in that valley. So, so
Yeah, I think in the interview on the radio they were talking about the purple rocks on the way out of the
Parkway.
Yeah. Right by the visitor center there.
Yeah.
And how that's a different.
Yeah, those purple rocks, they're all volcanic rocks, I think, and they're Coldbrook group. There might be some interbedded sediments, but like they're so metamorphosed that you almost can't recognize what it originally was.
So is it pressure? Pressure just changed completely. Like
Oh yeah,
pressure and just a whole bunch of
pressure
stuff.
and like fluids through it, and so chemical replacement.
Because they'd be rich with iron to make it purple.
To make it purple, yeah.
Because there's a few crops along the Fundy Poke past some of the cliffs too that have the really bright purple rocks and stuff too. So, which probably follow right up along.
Yeah.
Have you ever been to Martin Head?
Yeah.
Is that what's the?
I think Martin Head, if I remember correctly, that's structurally controlled. Like the bedrock part is structured, and I think it's an outlier of this Cambrian rock. But I have to look that up.
Yeah.
I was down there when we were working on the Fundy Model Forest. I was involved in that, and we were doing like soil mapping all throughout that area at that point.
Did you ever, when you were at Martin Head, did you ever go to the fossilized sand dunes?
No, I haven't seen those ones.
I haven't either.
But there are some similar ones at Duck Pond, like I think I mentioned.
Yeah, you
Duck
mentioned
Pond.
that. I got to go down that area. I didn't even know that area was there.
It's sort of like a little bit off the beaten path, you know, because you have to take like the scenic route through Gardner Creek, and then towards Tynemouth, or however you spell that. But before you get to the exit to Tynemouth, you go along this shore road, and it's a dirt road. It's called Duck Pond Road.
Yeah.
Now, I bet you if it was called Duck Pond Beach Road, more people would go there.
Yeah,
But
I could see that.
and you get there, and like, we were there a few weeks ago with a couple of colleagues, and you can actually climb towards Split Rock.
Yeah.
Like on the littoral platform, you can walk out at low tide, and you can climb it in the back. And I think people camped on there because in the middle there's a really flat kind of, the grass and the vegetation is kind of flat.
Yeah.
But you were like we were in the fog, and it's like you're on a different planet.
Yeah. No, it's weird. It looks like some of the features down in Nova Scotia along that coast.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, there's a duck pond. There's caves, just like in St. Martin's.
Yeah.
They're not as big.
Yeah.
But then it has a sort of like a little bit of a sea stack kind of things on one of the promontories too. So it's got this miniature kind of landscape, and it's beautiful.
I always thought it was funny that you have to go all the way from St. John to Fundy Trail Parkway, and there's not much for trails in between.
Yeah.
Like it's. Have you ever been to Chimney Rock?
Chimney Rock.
I call it Chimney Rock. It's a trail, but it's up near Napadog and Deersdale area, and it's a crack in the earth that's it might be 6 feet across.
Right.
You climb down into it, and the Chimney Rock's just a piece of the wall that came across, and it looks almost like this kind of rock.
Right. Yeah.
It almost looks columnar, but it's wider, so I don't think it is. I think it's just separated from the rock face.
Okay.
But it's this narrow little gorge that goes down through.
Yeah. Is there a hiking trail in there?
It's an old road, basically.
Okay.
There's an ATV trail that goes right, like you can stand right beside it and not even see it's there.
Yeah. I don't think
it's
I've
pretty
ever been
amazing
there.
spot.
No. There's not a whole lot of places in the province where I am, because I've been in the woods since
Well, that's when you said Duck Pond. I'm like, my God, how do I not know? But like after 10 years of exploring everything, I'm still finding these fascinating places.
Well, one of the guys that started working for me when he was a student, which was like 1987, and we sort of like, he stayed up, he started working out of our Bathurst office, and I worked down here. And between the two of us, there's not many roads that we haven't traveled in the province, like Woods Road and this, and every once in a while we go someplace and there's new roads in there and we see something totally new. Yeah. And now with LiDAR, oh man, like I wish there was LiDAR like 30 years ago, it changes the whole picture, the detail, like you could walk through a landscape and there would be like little beach ridges that would only be this high, and you would not notice them. And you look on the LiDAR and you can just pick them out because you just trace right through the landscape.
It's amazing.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's what I tell my young colleagues. I said, taking all the fun out of field work, But, yeah.
Oh, there's still lots of fun to be had.
Oh yeah. There is. And I mean, like, we come up here. Like, I mean, we have a couple of grandchildren in New Maryland here, and we've taken them up here, and they say the same thing. So this is a volcano, but like, there's no fire.
Yeah, there's no fire. There's no lava. There's all that. But it's noticeably, the rock is noticeably different than most places.
Well, in this literature part, it also says if you pick it up, you can feel that it's considerably heavier. And you can tell, like, I mean, you pick it up, and you can feel it's heavy. Yeah. For its size, right?
Yeah.
And it's because there's a lot of iron and manganese in it.
Yeah, it's almost like steel.
Yeah, I'll crack it open and we'll see if we can see the crystals in it. Yeah. So when you look at this, right?
Yeah.
You can actually see the little crystals, right?
Yeah.
And it's coarser than normal basalts would be. So they call this a micro Gabro. Yeah, you see the small crystals in there.
So what would that look like in more of the columnar, fast drying stuff, or
it would be just pure black.
It'd be pure black because.
Yeah, there's in those basalts there's almost no feldspars in it, right? There's a little bit more feldspars and stuff in this, and that's what gives it a little bit of a grayish color. Yeah. The basalts are usually darker.
I think the first time I noticed the columnar stuff, we went to Giant Causeway in Ireland,
where the U2 video was filmed.
I didn't know that, but yeah, probably.
Yeah.
I would guess, but yeah.
That's the
It's a
only
pretty
way.
popular spot. Like
I've been in Ireland, but I've
Yeah.
never been at the giant causeway.
But it's quite a tourist attraction where you walk down over the hill by the coast. There's trails going along the coast, but it's just a
Oh, it's a classic. Right? It's
very
on
nice.
textbooks. You know,
yeah,
like-
yeah. Oh, no doubt. It's just it's very clear what it is. Like
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
because
Oops.
even when you get down to Grand Manan, you see some of the cliffs and stuff. It's not as hexagonal, I guess it is.
And when you go to Southern Head, where the lighthouse is,
yeah,
one of the cliffs there is like it's almost like a classic example.
yeah.
Yeah.
Is that down just to the right of the lighthouse?
Yep.
I think. I know what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I spent some time there taking pictures of sunsets.
yeah. Yeah. So you know that's just beautiful, you know. But I mean, you go to places like Iceland too, and you can. We were there. But, I mean, going back to Holland every once in a while, you know, you can stop in Iceland for free, like, and so you fly with with Iceland Air, and we've stopped over and make a little tour and visit some spots and stuff, and you can actually see columnar basalts, and it might be like a couple of meters thick, and then on top of that you have like modern gravels. And below you have gravels that are just a little bit older, you know, but not very old, like maybe 1,000 years or a couple hundred years, right?
Yeah.
So, and in between you have this package of solid rock, right?
Yeah.
So that's really odd, you know,
Yeah.
'cause there's not many environments where you find stuff like that. Like,
So would it be older gravel that was covered over by
Yeah.
lava, and then
yeah.
newer gravel on
Yeah,
top
so
of that?
and these gravels, they're just not consolidated.
Yeah.
Because they're not very old.
Yeah.
Right. And so then you have lava on top of it,
Yeah.
and it might melt or consolidate and harden the upper level of the gravels a little bit.
Yeah.
But that
Make more of a conglomerate kind
Yeah,
of rock
yeah.
at that point.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sugarloaf Mountains, it's different rock, is it? or-
Yeah. I think it's a rhyolite. It's a felsic volcanic.
Yeah.
But it's also like the same similar kind of thing. But that would be, see, the chemical composition would give it away as a terrestrial volcano, so formed on a continental crust, which is a different composition as the ones that are made in the rift zones.
Oh, okay.
right? So,
Okay.
yeah.
Is that because it's coming from deeper in the rift zones?
Yeah, well, and it's just a different composition because the ocean crust is made out of different materials, right?
Oh, okay. Okay, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, so the
it's
ocean
a
crust
different
is
melted rock,
is
basically.
heavier,
Yeah.
and that's why the oceans are.
Oh, okay.
And
So that'd be a
continental crust is lighter, so it's more buoyant. Yeah,
That
so-
makes sense because that rhyolite, we hiked, me and a friend of mine hiked Traveler Mountain in Baxter State Park last
Right,
year, and
yeah.
it's the highest volcano in Maine, I guess.
Right.
And it's all rhyolite. It's a
Yeah.
light. It almost sounds like ceramic when you're walking.
Yeah, yeah, it is.
It's
yeah,
really
and
light.
it's very. You can see some crystalline shapes in there, but it's very fine. But it's very, very fine grained, right? So
Yeah.
it's cooled off really rapidly,
Yeah.
right?
Which makes
So
sense,
it's-
is because it's
So
super
it's very
slippery when
close
it
to the
gets wet.
surface. Yeah,
It's really slippery when it gets
Yeah.
wet, and that's probably why
yeah.
the
So-
finer grains. So up north, is there any other around Mount Carlton or any interesting stuff that just?
Well, see, Mount Carlton itself is also it's like a volcanic caldera, actually.
Oh, it is?
Like
Okay.
That whole area.
Yeah.
Not where the lake is now or
Mhm.
anything like that, but where the rocks were initially formed. It's shaped like a composite volcano almost.
So the caldera at Mount Carlton, can you tell where the caldera is now? Like, would it be within the peaks that are there, or would it be just kind of?
Yeah. Well, actually, at Mount Carlton is also written up in that
Mhm.
in that book, I think. And in the park itself, there's a very good geological display at the interpretive center.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
but see, there's a lot of glacial workings there too, like the whole Sagamuk, for instance, like where the tors are,
Mhm.
those big angular rocks on
Yeah.
the side. Well, you just go in behind that and you can find like glacial striated pieces of bedrock, and you can find erratics right in the saddle between Sagamuk and
Mhm.
Mount Carlton.
Yeah.
But
So would that be older then, or do you know the age of the Mount Carlton volcanic origin? part?
yeah, those are Devonian.
Okay.
See, the Appalachian Range goes from, well, yeah, really, yeah, Caledonia is a part of it too, but the Miramichi Highlands are a younger part of that.
Mhm.
But they go all through the Gaspé, and then they hook up at Cape Breton in Newfoundland. It's all part of that same kind of. And there's a few large fault zones in there, like the Cobequid Fault, like just north of Truro. When you come back from Halifax, you at one point you come off the Wentworth Valley, and you come down, and if you look right, you can see this straight line in the landscape, and it's a gigantic fault, and it goes all the way to Cape Breton, basically. And that's one of those major structural lineaments, I guess, that separate some of these terrains. And the terrains are older, like Caledonia, and then you have younger ones like Silurian, Devonian, and then the Carboniferous Basin. The basin goes from Bathurst to Fredericton to Moncton, like the big. If you remember the geological map, it's the big yellow wedge, right? Yeah. And that's like an intermontane basin, basically, like similar to what you would have, like in the northwestern U.S. today,
like Wyoming or something like that.
Yeah. With larger, I mean, probably the Miramichi Islands were, I don't know if they were the size of the Rockies, but they were a lot higher than they were today.
Yeah. So were the Appalachians then all volcanic origin, or were they pushed up? Or
Oh,
a
they're
combination
pushed.
of both?
It's part of
I guess it's all part of the
accretionary
same.
terrain, right?
Yeah.
When you get the book, I already have the book.
It's at home. I haven't been home yet for a couple of days, but yeah,
But-
it's there ready
But
for me.
there's a really good there's a really good introduction into the book about accretionary terrains. You know, like, so what means that sometimes when you have sedimentation in the basins, like offshore basins, and then you get things pushed up again, like these sediments, they get plastered onto the continent, right? And sometimes it even goes so far, like in the Bathurst area, the volcanoes that are like in an archetype setting like Japan today, for instance. Just imagine that whole string of islands get pushed against Asia, right? And Japan Sea would disappear. Right?
Yeah.
So that's what you call an accretionary terrain. It gets pushed against
Kind of
an
two
existing
landscapes mixing
continent.
together. Yeah.
And then there's times when it separates, like when the Bay of Fundy formed, right? But then there are also, right now,
Which would be different, a lot different than a subduction zone like out west. kind of thing.
Yeah. So right now we are on a passive margin. That's why we don't have any volcanoes.
Yeah.
We don't have any earthquakes. Like the whole eastern seaboard's basically like.
Basically on the center of a big plate.
Yeah. The only.
I always thought that was a lucky thing.
Yeah. The only dangerous thing here is now, like with sea level change and stuff like that. You know, there might be some issues with the low-lying, cities and stuff like that. And that's going to be a problem. But
Spednick Lake's a hidden gem. That's
Oh,
a nice
it is.
spot down
Like,
there.
we have-
for boating and hiking and
we
camping and the whole
we wilderness
whole thing.
camp there. Like we canoe a lot and stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, we've been in Ontario and Georgian Bay and stuff like that with our kids that live there. And man, like I call Spednick our Algonquin. Like because minus the people.
It's pretty extensive too.
It is very
You can
extensive,
explore,
yeah, and but you don't have the amount of people that you have in
No.
Algonquin, right? Like you can go to a wilderness site there, and you have to share it with somebody, and you have to book it like 3 months in advance.
Yeah.
Here you can just go out and you probably find a spot.
just to show up there. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a whole, and I mean, one of my friends, we actually going to the Parkway on Saturday. Because my wife and I, we bought an ambassador passes.
Yeah.
Because like last year we were there 5 or 6 times. And I said, gee, we might as well just get a season pass.
There's a lot of people bought season passes this year. It
Oh,
was, it was double what it was, I think, last year.
Well, it's like it's a no-brainer, right?
Yeah.
If you go like 3 or 4 times with a car full of people, then
Yeah, it makes a big difference when that Long Glen side
Yeah.
opened up and the drive through to Sussex. So
yeah, that's nice too. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, I mean, there's so much to see, right? I mean.
there is.
I mean, one of our favorite spots, and this is the other thing, like, there's not, you hike down to Melbourne Beach and Pangburn, and like, most of the time, like, you're there by yourself.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever been to Melbourne Beach and seen people there.
Oh, I've seen people
I
there.
go at night. I go at off times too. I slept down there for one night.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, on the beach?
Yeah, I hiked in and
I went to do star photography, then it clouded in. I just laid there on the beach and fell asleep
Oh,
and
wow.
slept for a couple hours, got up at like 2 in the morning and walked out again.
Never done that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, it's comfortable. I had a
it's-
down jacket on. It was, I think it was middle October, but it was a nice warm night. It's great. Just sit there. And
I think that beach is probably the nicest pebble beach in all of Atlantic Canada, like,
Yeah.
including Newfoundland.
yeah.
Like, it's unreal. Like, and I mean, I tell people, like, we have friends in Switzerland, and I mean, we've been there and hiking and stuff like that, and they visited here, and I mean, where do you take people from Switzerland, like,
Yeah.
to see scenery, right? Well, you take them to Pangburn,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
because, well, they love the ocean, you know, but they haven't never seen anything like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Heron Cove's got a nice, but it's not.
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not that nice.
it does. Yeah,
It
and
kind
I
of
mean,
turns into sand after a little bit.
yeah, and I like Point Wolf too, you know, in the park.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
but yeah, way more people, right?
So the cliffs at Pangbourne, that's all sedimentary, is it? The orange rock that's kind of.
Yeah, I think that is. It might even be Carboniferous. I'm not sure. I'll have to look at. I can't remember. See, I'm not a bedrock geologist, right? I'm a surface guy. I do glacial stuff and soil and.
Oh, okay.
I mean, I know quite a bit.
So
about
how
the
far does that
bedrock.
go into like beaches and like the eastern side of the province, I guess?
Oh yeah, the eastern side of the province, like the beaches there are a different kind of. They're formed in a different way, right? I mean, they're all formed in rising sea level context, right?
Mhm.
So it's sand that gets washed out to the ocean and it gets pushed back up.
Yeah.
The whole Dutch coast is made like that.
Yeah.
Like, and we're protected by those things up to now, you know, mostly. But Acushnet is like one of my colleagues. He's probably got the best job of all of us. Like, he's the coastal geomorphologist. Like, he does
He goes to the
beach
beach all the
surveys.
time. Yeah.
He's on it, like we were always joking with him. We're like, oh, where are you going this week in Dominique? And so him and his buddy, like, they do all these erosional measurements and stuff, and how the beach changes after storms and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is important for like protection and stuff.
It happens
like that.
fast.
Yeah, it
On
happens.
geological terms.
Yeah, it happens like in the blink of an eye, geologically speaking. Yeah, but
Yeah, it's interesting. Just the all the islands out around the Miramichi Bay and stuff that kind of protect it there too.
yeah, I was actually reading something the other day that, and I've always thought it that like where all those long sand beaches are, and it either happened on Prince Edward Island or it happened like along Miramichi Bay.
Mhm.
I'm sure there was Vikings there, you know, because
Mm.
in the sagas they talk about like butternuts and grapes and stuff like that,
Yeah.
and that was like sort of the northern extent of that.
Mhm.
So it's either PEI or our side of the Northumberland Strait, you know. But of course, everything, if they left anything behind, it's all underwater. So
Yeah. Yeah.
it's hard to. And they probably didn't have any permanent sediment, so like they would have to lose their cell phone or something, and you'd find it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. But-
I thought it was interesting. I never really noticed before, but all of the river and stream valleys on the Fundy footpath, the way they form, the gravel bars are all in one direction because of the way the tides come in and
Yeah.
form them.
Yeah.
That
Have
was
you
fascinating.
ever been underwater down at St. Martin's, like in a kayak or on the Zodiac or?
I think a long time ago.
Yeah. The Red Rock guys. I took a bunch of Japanese people from their public broadcasting, like to the caves.
Yeah, I think you
And we
mentioned that,
discussed the
yeah.
caves, and then we took the Zodiac out on the bay, and got talking to Mike Carpenter, one of the guys at the Red Rock, and he said,
Mm-hmm.
"Yeah, we said we're always interested in learning more about the geology." And I said, "Well," he said, "let's set something up." And so I got a crew of 8 of us from our survey branch together, and we went on a day-long trip along that stretch of the coast.
Yeah.
Sue Johnson was one of the, and she knows a lot about the bedrock geology down in there, so it's
Yeah.
great. Because he said the people that are out on the water in their kayaks and stuff, they're really interested in
Yeah.
how this shaped and and how old it is and all
Oh
that sort
yeah.
of stuff. Right?
Yeah,
So-
that's on a big increase this year too. So
oh yeah.
I actually started a paddling MB Facebook page, and I've got the website bought. I'm going to start that this winter.
So are you a kayaker or a canoeer?
I've got a canoe that Mom and Dad. I've got an Old Town canoe that Mom and Dad have had for
20 years. We used to use it as a teenager kind of thing, and it's been sitting in behind the shed, and I finally pulled it out and put it in my shed. So we've been out in front of home. I live up in Nackwick, just across the river from Nackwick, so we drag it down to the river and canoe up around. And
oh yeah, we canoed a stretch from McKinley Landing down into town, like probably 10 times every year. You know, and the water's really low now, so you can't even come through the passage here. But this spring, and I mean that's the other interesting thing right now. Like there's so much erosion happening on the islands. I picked up an Indian point like this long, perfect shape, like right on the beach here. Because of all the erosion that's happening on these islands. So they're actually doing an inventory this summer, I think, and they're going to go around some because it's a known archaeological site, right?
So, a friend of mine found one on Sheldrake Island. Many years ago.
And so anyway, I brought it to the people at the Culture and Heritage at their archaeological branch, and they catalog everything for the First Nations and stuff like that. So, but yeah, there were more finds these last 2 springs because of all the erosion, because of the flooding.
But yeah, some of the artifacts and archaeological sites and stuff around are fascinating.
Oh, they are, yeah.
Especially up
and I
around
mean, the landscape, like, so I was talking about Killarney Lake earlier on, right? So. So the ice disappeared around 11,000, and then it warmed up, and then it cooled off really rapidly again. But then it warmed up for good around 10,000, and or 11,800 or something like that. And then at 11,000, I think 300 or something, there were people that camped on the delta in Marysville. Do you remember a few years ago there was a excavation there
when they were building the highway?
Yeah, right on the highway.
Yeah, right there, the Peniac exit there. No, I know what you mean.
So where the ball field is, so on top of a delta, like in its supposed glacial delta. So it's, I don't know how high it is. I think it's 45 meters or something like that. So these people were here, like the ice barely disappeared. And there are people in the landscape. I do tours through Odell Park with grade 4 classes, and there's one spot there. Have you been to the ledges in Odell Park?
The little cliff that overhang, every time I'm there, there's a different fort built on it.
and well, I tell the kids, I said, just imagine the landscape. I said, there's no trees yet. You know, there's like just like little dwarf birches and some heather and some mosses and stuff. I said, there's probably like caribou down in the valley, you know, and the water is, at this point, the water is still up to where, you know, where the little bridges in the botanical garden there? Like, well, the water is probably still up to there, you know. I said, so this would be a perfect spot for people to camp.
For the ice ages, what caused them? Was it climatic? Like, was it volcanic ash in the atmosphere, or was it?
You have the book The Last Billion Years?
I saw it.
I put it in my email, It's in any library here, actually. It's and there's a little schematic thing in there because there's different things happening. The Earth, it goes around the sun in an elliptical orbit, right?
It's further away.
And the orbit goes from like elliptical this to elliptical this. And then the Earth's axis, it wobbles. So right now it's 23 degrees off the solar plane. Sometimes I think it goes in between 21 and 25 or something like that, and so it changes the radiation that's received in the northern hemisphere, and so it changes everything about the climate, like all the circulation patterns, the ocean patterns, and then the other thing that has an impact is how slowly, and this is on the long term, is how the continents shift. So, I mean, there were ice ages back in the Permian, there was ice ages back in the Cambrian, right? But the ice ages that we are in today, because we are really still in the ice ages, this is just an interglacial, right? So, they call them Milankovitch cycles, and they're all solar system cycles. And so that really determines, like, the radiation budget of the Earth.
How much? Radiation's the sun's putting out, basically.
And how much ice forms. And
so because then it's reflective if it's ice forms.
If these cycles stay the way they are, we are due to go slowly back into a new ice age. And that's really hard to believe with global warming and all that sort of stuff. And maybe our influence...
So like next year, or?
No. Like on the scale of like 10, 20,000 years.
Yeah.
And people actually think that maybe human activity can change those cycles.
Yeah.
I think that's pretty arrogant of us to believe so.
Sounds like
I think Earth will.
Sounds like a bad movie.
Yeah, Earth will do its own thing, right?
There's actually an interpretive sign in the Moss Glen Trail down the Kingston Peninsula that explains that wobbling and the change in how the Earth is sometimes further away from.
At the Kingston Peninsula down here.
Yeah. There's a Moss Glen nature trail that Irving was part of it, and there's a local group that was part of it, and I forget, maybe DNR was part of it or something.
Okay.
They just kind of, yeah. But there's an interpretive sign in there, and it's by an erratic that's sitting there.
Okay, and it explains the glaciers.
Yeah.
It's not part of Stoneham, is it?
I don't think it is. No.
I wonder who did
that was the first time I've ever seen the change in the.
Could be Lucy Wilson. She's at UNB St. John. She would be somebody that would.
Yeah.
Something like that in there. Yeah.
Yeah, it wouldn't be irregular trail builders that would come up with it.
But the thing is, I mean, for the longest time, it wasn't that long ago that, people, and even geologists, they rejected glaciation, they rejected continental drift, right? I mean, these are all fairly new ideas, right?
Yeah.
We're still learning lots of new things.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we're going to try to do with our new highway map is put this sort of in a regional context, right? You look at this and people say, yeah, Currie Mountain's an old volcano. Yeah, right.
Well, yeah, I mean, just when you came and explained out just the
it's related to the capping lava that's on top of McLeod Hill Road, and the fault stretches all the way to Minto and down to Harvey, right? And it's all interconnected, right?
Yeah.
And the reason why they know they're sort of similar environment and belong to the same is because the age. You can age these things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they're dated roughly the same age, and chemically they're almost identical. Even like these Gabros and the basalts that are on top of the Carlisle Road quarry, they're chemically they're almost identical.
Yeah. So is it columnar up there?
No, I don't think it is.
No.
Well, you can't see it. I think it would be in that report. It might say that there are a couple of places where you could possibly see it, but I have never. I've never really observed it. Right now, it's really hard to get to the basalts because they're at the top.
Yeah.
And there's these big, unstable cliffs, so you can't really get close to it. Yeah, I mean, if you want to, I can show you where the entrance. But it's not easy, not hard to find. It's just if you go up to Carlisle.
Yeah, I might suppose you can drive up and see it. Or you can drive up to it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want to drive up to it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Sussex Bluffs would have been the bottom of a river at some point then?
Yeah. It would be basically a alluvial plain, probably braided streams, like you find maybe in very dry areas today, intermittent streams. And we find a lot of the braided streams here in Canada now we find in the Arctic, right? Because you have no flow in the wintertime, but you have extreme flow in the spring, and then you have almost no flow again in the summertime.
Yeah, and no vegetation there.
Yeah. Yeah, so when we do this with grade 4 students, we park the buses over here and make them walk down, and they can pick through the rock pile. And it's beautiful calcite crystals and stuff like that that are in there,
Yeah, it's really cool.
You can find sedimentary rocks and volcanic rocks. And, yeah, that's not bad.
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Take that one home for Vicky.
But, that's typical for the type of volcanic rocks you find here.
Yeah.
And often there's pieces of sediments included in it and stuff like that.
So when it's like that, it looks like conglomerate, but it's just pieces cooled quicker than the other around it?
Exactly, yeah. Because these lava flows, right, these are, the chapter in the book's called Little Volcano. Right?
Yeah.
These are they're not gigantic eruptions, right? They're just little fissures, in the crust.
Yeah.
and you have rifting, and then you have some lava flowing up, and it picks away at stuff around it and picks it up and incorporates it in there. So when Sandra and Martha talk about Currie Mountain, they say that it sort of stands out, like, and it does stand out in the river valley, even though it's not that high, but it's.
Oh yeah, if you look off the Westmoreland Street Bridge, you can see it.
You can see it, and you can see it by the type of vegetation, right?
Yeah.
And down here on this part of Carlisle Road, fairly rich soils too, because all these volcanic rocks incorporated in the soils.
Yeah.
So you have a lot of
nutrients,
orchards and stuff like that, right?
Oh, that's true. I never thought of that. Yeah. Yeah, because the field you come up through from Currie Mountain, it goes through a little orchard.
Yeah, there's several of them along here. Yeah. Yeah. So it stands out in the landscape, and it's also geologically it sort of stands out because it's quite different than all the sedimentary rocks all around us, right? So if you go closer to the cliffs on that side, I think that's where they've seen pillows in this and some columnar kind of jointing.
So when you say pillows, what do you mean? Well, I remember the term, but I can't remember.
Yeah, well, when you have pillow basalts, it's often when stuff, like, it might hit a little bit of water or whatever, and it cools, and it sort of almost forms like a ball.
Oh,
right?
okay.
And so you get these curving kind of structures. That was the one that I just picked up.
More rounded.
Yeah. And you can see it sometimes in the structures that, they're sort of like rounded, and then the outside almost looks like pillows.
Yeah.
Yeah, this one maybe here too. You see, and there's quite a bit of copper in the system, obviously, because it's all green.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I hope you got some information that will help you, and
I think definitely. Yeah, there's lots, definitely.
I'd like to thank Toon Pronk for hiking up Currie Mountain with me and explaining to us the fascinating geology across the province and how it relates to the hiking trails. Now, everywhere I go, I'm looking at rocks and cliffs and pebbles and wondering what their origin is. It's fascinating, and most of the hiking trails revolve around some kind of interesting geology. The next couple of episodes are also going to be interviews. I have an interview with Eric Obenel. We hike up to Lookout over Dark Harbor in Grand Manan. He's the current president of the Grand Manan Hiking Trails Association. Also have an interview with Bob and Judy Stone. He's the past president, and between the both of them, they have an extensive knowledge of all the trails around Grand Manan, and we tie that into some of the hikes that we did while we were on Grand Manan for a week. Until next time, hope to see you on the trail.